Friday on the DreArea Sports Show, we're joined by Ryan G. Hensley, host of the Ryan G. Hensley Show, to talk about what the 49ers need to do on draft day and to get back to the Super Bowl. And with the Warriors winning 6 in a row, are they poised for a deep playoff run? All this and more at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Time on the DreArea Sports Show. Like, share, and subscribe.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the DreArea Sports Show. I'm joined today by Ryan G. Hensley, host of the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Ryan, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just hanging out. It's Friday, trying to work, stream, all that good stuff. Combine it all and be halfway decent at both, hopefully.
Exactly. And you know what? I think people need to realize, too, it's very hard when you're trying to balance your home life, your work life, and then your streaming life, because you're like, you want to do this all the time. But, you know, obviously work and family always comes first, right?
Yeah. And I got 4 kids, man, and they definitely keep me busy. Usually I that's why I stream typically 9 a.m. and I'm done for the rest of the day so I can work on my real estate stuff. And then at night, I don't even stream at all because I dedicate that to the family. So yeah, it's a tough balancing act.
Oh, yeah. Well, and plus if you have 4 kids, and I know your kids play sports as well, a lot of that stuff is going to be in the evening or at night, 7 o'clock on, where they have games and practices and all that. Because I know my kids are getting to the age now where they're playing soccer and they're playing baseball, and it's all like from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on. I'm just like, oh my God, what is going on here? But it's fun to watch, man.
Yeah, I love it, man. My kids are getting pretty old. My youngest is 16. I got a kid in track in college. I got a 24-year-old daughter. I got a senior who's going to be doing track probably in college. So I'm getting towards the end of this path. How old are your kids?
My kids are only 8 and 6, so you definitely have a head start on me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you got a long road ahead of you, but it goes by fast, man. I remember it like yesterday. Man. Yeah.
Even like my oldest son, he's been playing soccer now for about, this is year 3. And his last game, like immediately he went after the ball. He was playing defense. He was telling his team to spread out. He was doing things he's never done before because he's learning the game. He's understanding how to play the game. So it was really cool to watch, man. I mean, just like watching your kids learn and grow with the game. It's one of the most incredible feelings I've ever had. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And soccer is the way to go, man. That's the best. Especially when they're young, man, it prepares them for pretty much every sport that they want to take on later on in life. Soccer's awesome.
Oh, for real, man. I really, really enjoy it. So today we're going to talk about, we'll start talking about the 49ers. Now, they made a bunch of moves this offseason, and we're going to take a look at that. I mean, some of these moves were not the sexiest moves, but I think they were really good quality pickups in terms of like how they, what they add to the overall roster, especially for the defensive line. I love the additions of Yatir Gross-Matos, Jordan Elliott, and Malik Collins. But Ryan, give me your take on how the Niners offseason has gone so far, in your opinion.
I think they're either the same or better at most positions. The exception being safety, and just because they lost Gibson. Now, Huff and Brown might do an amazing job if that's who they end up rolling with, but they definitely need some depth there. But outside of that, I think they've either maintained their level for cheaper with healthier guys than they've had in previous years, or they've improved. My favorite, honestly, one of my favorite pickups is Isaac Yiadom, however you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
I think he's a very underrated pickup for the 49ers that not a lot of people are talking about, but I think he's pretty talented guy. He had a great year last year for the Saints. So he's kind of an underrated pickup by the Niners, but overall, I think they've done a good job of getting cheaper and replacing guys with people that have been more available, which is important. There seems to be a theme with everyone they picked up, and it's guys that have been durable. And that's obviously important.
When that was tough, that was a tough loss with Eric Armstead. But again, you're talking about a guy who only posted 1 double-digit sack year in his time with the Niners. He was here for 9 years, and he missed a lot of time with injuries. I mean, we all know that he has a chronic Achilles, or not Achilles, but what do you call it? Plantar fasciitis that comes and goes throughout the season. So he's always missing time. But I mean, he's a great leader in the locker room. But to lose him was pretty tough. But I mean, losing him, but turning that into Jordan Elliott, Gross Matos, and all these other players that they were able to add, they definitely added more depth to their defensive line, which I think is going to help them, because the last time the Niners had great depth at their defensive line, in my opinion, was back in was it 2019 when we made it to the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs. But that season, they had depth at their defensive line. But as the season went on, they started losing guys left and right, and they became just basically focused on their starting defensive line by the time we got to the Super Bowl, because we lost a lot of that depth.
Mm-hmm.
But losing a guy, I heard you guys talking about it earlier, losing a guy in like DJ Jones has always been a factor in terms of how they stop the run. But I think getting guys like Jordan Elliott is going to help a lot in terms of stopping the run, because last year that seemed to be the biggest issue was how you stop the run. They didn't seem to be very effective at doing that throughout the year and even the playoffs as well.
Yeah, man. And, the 49ers have work to do at depth on that D-line. I think that's you're going to see some late free agency signings, some, maybe not necessarily big names. A lot of the big names are gone at this point, but just depth pieces, guys that they think, have been maybe underperformed for their capabilities and so far in their careers. The 49ers are great at doing that on the defensive line. So I think we see some more free agent signings after the draft. They're going to see how the draft plays out, see who they can acquire in the draft, and then continue to add depth to this team. But I think they've done a good job getting cheaper and finding guys, again, that are healthy, that have been durable. And Niners have had, last year was kind of the exception for the 49ers as far as health is concerned. Typically, the 49ers have been a pretty beat-up, injured team, and hopefully they do the same this year, but, you can't really count on it, and I expect them to continue to add depth to that D-line.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the idea that, they were in a position where they may have gone after a Joey Bosa if he became available, I think for fans, that would have been a lot of fun. But I mean, it would have been cool, though, just to have him with Nick Bosa on the same defensive line. But again, a lot of things would have had to have happened for that to even become a factor. But with Leonard Floyd coming in, he isn't the sexiest signing, but he's a good quality defensive end who doesn't get hurt, who posted I think he had 9.5 sacks last year, if not more. All these guys that they acquired are good quality players, and that was one thing that I liked about what they did. Because in the past, it was all about, we lose some guys, but we're going to sign one big name like Javon Hargrave, who didn't really have the best year. I think he will have a better year this year with more help around him, but not good against the run. I mean, they were literally running at him, and he was unable to really make an impact against the running game.
Yeah, and I think, that's the 49ers went for two guys to replace one guy in Jordan Elliott and then Malik Collins. One's better at pass rush, one's more capable against the run, and so you'll have one in during rundowns, you'll have one in during passing downs, and those two guys are basically replacing one guy in Eric Armstead. Armstead's contract didn't really justify based on his production, and so the idea of Armstead, and he, great guy, great person in the community. I live out here in the Sacramento area, and he's well loved out here for the things he's done for the community. He's a good person. He's a leader on the team. But if we're being honest, his production has not matched his contract. So I understand why the 49ers wanted to move on. I also understand why Armstead wasn't willing to accept $6 million. So I understand both points of view, and I think the 49ers are probably better off because of it.
I think so. I mean, yeah, he was an impact on the defensive line, but even when he came back late in the year and everybody said, okay, once he comes back, that should shore up our run defense, it really didn't, because I don't think he was ever really 100%. And so that's a guy who's going to have that same kind of injury bug probably every single year, moving forward. There was this today, I don't know if you saw it or not, but Eric Armstead says that the Texans tried to trade for me before the 49ers released him. And so he said that the Texans were trying to make a trade that fell through, and then he became a free agent. I guess they were trying to get him before he became a free agent. Makes me wonder what they were offering for Eric Armstead. But the Texans, man, oh my gosh, they have completely bolstered up their roster and their defense and offense. And DeMeco Ryans has a great team on his hands right now. But then again, he is going against teams like the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Dolphins. You know, the AFC is stacked right now. So, yeah, like they have a great team, but they have to go through a lot of other great teams to even get to the Super Bowl. Well, we only got to face one of them in the Super Bowl, not even in the postseason.
You know, I've been live all morning, so this is the first time I'm seeing this. You're actually sharing this with me for the first time. That's interesting because the 49ers did trade with the Texans for Malik Collins, give him a 7th round pick.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
No, it's all right. That happens. I'm surprised that they didn't trade. I mean, it feels like you would have got more in a trade than you would just let him go to free agency. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
And I guess he posted that. This is from a Bleacher Report. It doesn't say exactly what they were offering. It just says that they were trying to work out a trade before he became a free agent. And that would make sense, too, because, I mean, obviously, DeMeco Ryans is probably a big fan of Eric Armstead. And he was like, man, let's try to get this guy. And unfortunately, they weren't able to make it happen. But staying on the topic of the Texans, I mean, what do you think about the trade that they made to get Stephon Diggs? That's a big move for them, and for to bring in a receiver to help C.J. Stroud. What'd you think about that?
On the interesting part about it that we just learned after the fact was that they waived, or basically he's going to be a free agent after 1 year. So they didn't trade him for his whole entire contract. It's just for 1 year. I think what DeMeco's trying to do is go all in for a Super Bowl. That's really what it seems like to me is, and which I love. Like, go after it, man. They had a lot of success last year, and C.J. Stroud is just 1 year better. It's a sophomore year. Has experience under his belt, and they were extremely successful based on what they did the prior year. I think they had 3 wins the prior year, or 2 or 3 wins the prior year, and now they're they went to the playoffs, and now they've even rebuilt and got better. So I'm really impressed with DeMeco Ryans. He's the kind of coach that I would like to play for because he's a player. He's positive. He has energy. He just knows how to build up players. So I'm excited about the Texans. I'm hoping they can knock off the Chiefs and hopefully the Niners get back there. But it would be pretty damn heartbreaking if the 49ers it's heartbreaking whenever they lose. But losing to DeMeco Ryans would be tough as well, even though I'd be happy for DeMeco because I think he's a good guy. But I tweeted that out, man, and a lot of people are thinking about that, like, losing to your former defensive coordinator would be tough to swallow as well. But they got a long way to go. I mean, they still got to knock off the Chiefs, and the AFC is super stacked. So as good as they look right now on paper, they still got to do it when the season starts. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm happy for DeMeco. I think he's doing a fantastic job.
I mean, when you add guys like Danielle Hunter, Stephon Diggs, re-signing their tight end Fisher. I mean, look, this team is loaded with talent now. And we saw in the first round that the Texans, when they went up against the Ravens, it was, I mean, there was no chance they were going to beat the Ravens. The Ravens were flying around the field. And then when they played the Chiefs, they seemed to just kind of implode. But it just seemed like every year, it seemed like last year, it seemed like every team that should have beat the Chiefs lost. You talking about the Bills, the Ravens, and the Niners. Like, the Niners should have won that game. I mean, we're not going to go into the Super Bowl right now, but they, in all intents and purposes, they should have won that game, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, it's Patrick Mahomes is a huge difference maker. Now,
big time.
When you watch that game, you don't necessarily see the greatness of Patrick Mahomes, but when you got a player like Patrick Mahomes on your team, you're never out of it. I mean, this is a quarterback-centric league. Yeah, and that's what it's all about. If you have an elite quarterback, and Patrick Mahomes may end up being one of the greatest of all time when all is said and done, when you got a guy like that, it's the difference,
And so one of the things I want to bring up, which I thought I was actually trying to find the clip and I couldn't find it in time. So we talk a lot about, everyone's been talking about the Niners and what they have to do, come draft day or free agency and all that, and what needs to be upgraded, right? So one of the main things that everyone talked about after the Super Bowl was, what do the Niners need to upgrade on? And we talked about, everyone had talked about the offensive line. We got to upgrade the offensive line. They blew 2 big plays during the Super Bowl, which cost them, a championship. Yeah. And so, but then as I'm scrolling through my timeline, I see this clip of Ryan G. Hensley talking with the coach, And you made a comment that even when I heard it, I agree with the coach. I was like, nah, shut the fuck up. No fucking way. When you were like, I think they're just going to bring back the same old offensive line. I was like, ugh. I'm ahead. I'm like, he's just being negative. No, I'm not going to listen to that. And what did they do? They brought back everybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, how did this happen? But I guess you can argue that, hey, this line got him to the Super Bowl. But still, it's a flawed offensive line. So I thought it was so funny looking back on that. I was like, oh my God, he was right. He was right. Because you were like, I think they're just going to bring everybody back. And they did. Yeah. And it's just tough, but I think it's an area they still need to address. Do you think they're going to address that in this upcoming draft?
They will address it, but not in the way the fans want them to address it, right? Last year, we could have had this exact same conversation last year going into the draft. And everybody thought, oh, they're definitely going to invest in offensive line. My guy who I wanted was DeJuan Jones. He was available when the 49ers had their first pick. They instead decided to go with a kicker and 2 tight ends who might never play for the 49ers. So,
right.
So I was frustrated with that because DeJuan Jones he's a stud on the Browns, and he's probably going to be a stud for years to come. The Niners had an opportunity to get him. They didn't. And so there's 2 different things going on. There's what fans want, or what most people would, when they look at this team, would say is a weakness for the 49ers, and then there's what the 49ers consider a weakness. With Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they've laid out what their priorities are. Their priorities are quarterback, number 1, like every team, but their second priority is pass rush, whereas a lot of teams, I think it's mostly offensive line. For me, it would be offensive line and then pass rush corner. That comes after. But for the 49ers, it's pass rush. They are more concerned. Kyle Shanahan is more concerned with having an offensive line that knows what he wants them to do and does exactly what he wants. That outside zone, guys that can move, not necessarily just dogs that create space like that. So the 49ers don't look at their offensive line the way I look at their offensive line, and I've come to understand that. And that's why I said they're going to bring back that same offensive line that is starting the Super Bowl is going to be starting week 1. Now, they will go after some guys in the draft, but not necessarily the guys that we want, right? I think a lot of fans think, hey, go after the best right tackle in the draft. Well, they just extended Colton McKivitz. They don't look at the offensive line like a hole that needs to be filled. They do, I think, want some depth there. So I think they're going to get offensive line, maybe 2 guys, maybe 3, more like 2, I would imagine, in this draft. But they're not going to be starting week 1 for the 49ers or at all this year. I wouldn't imagine.
Do you think they'll use their first-round draft pick on an offensive lineman?
I think it's possible. I think the 49ers are trying to put themselves in a position where they can just go best player available and whatever that is. I could see them going after a defensive tackle. I can see them going after a pass rusher, a wide receiver, a corner, even a safety. I think are just as possible as an offensive lineman. Like when you get to where the 49ers are drafting, if they don't move up in the draft, none of those guys outside of maybe, I don't know, I can't think of his name, Graham Barton. Graham Barton could probably break the starting lineup for most NFL teams, but he's more of an interior guy. And so with Kyle Shanahan, it's about doing what I want you to do. And so I don't even know if Graham Barton can learn this 49ers offense well enough to satisfy Kyle Shanahan to start week 1. I think outside of Graham Barton, there's really not any offensive linemen that are going to be available at 31 that are so good that the Niners have to start them. I don't see that. Like a Kingsley Sumatea, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a very talented guy. He's raw. That's kind of who I want them to draft because I think he could turn into something special. But he's not going to break the starting lineup week 1 either. So I don't know. I really, who knows what they're going to do? I think the 49ers are probably looking at it like who can make an impact right away.
Yeah.
And I don't think offensive lineman is probably what they're thinking in that regard. More like a corner or a safety or somebody like that is probably who I would predict they go after.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that, there's been talk about the Niners possibly trying to make one more move. I mean, do you think it'd be worth it to go after a guy like a Patrick Surtain to give you that other shutdown corner across from Charvarius Ward? Or do you think that's a move that's, hey, you know what, we don't need to do that. Let's just focus on who we can draft and develop these players to get us back to the Super Bowl? Or do you think we should go after a guy like Surtain?
Well, the Niners, they seem to be preparing for the inevitable, which is we got to get cheaper across the board. Patrick Surtain, as great as he is, they haven't even extended Charvarius Ward or Diamador Lenore or Talanoa Huafunga. All those guys are free agents after this coming year. So I don't think they're going to go after a Patrick Surtain and sign him to a big contract, which he will require when they're in the process of trying to get cheaper and prepare for having a quarterback making $55 million a year, which is going to happen. So I don't think they sign a big free agent or make a trade for a big player. If there's any trades coming up, it's going to be BA in the draft, and going after a draft pick is the only trade I see happening. The only big move I can see happening the rest of this offseason.
Well, let's talk about that, though, because now that the Bills have traded Stephon Diggs, do you think that there's a possibility that the Niners could trade Brandon Ayuk to the Bills in order to get their first-round draft pick? Or do you think Ayuk has moved at all during the draft? Like, what are the odds you think that he does get traded during the draft or after the draft?
So I reported on my show this morning. Excuse me. I reported on my show this morning something I heard from a source in regards to that subject. This person told me that BA believes he could have a greater individual career outside of the 49er as feature receiver in a pass-heavy offense, but winning the Super Bowl still remains a priority for him. He would, of course, play for the 49ers if the money is right, but he has a number in mind that he's unsure the 49ers will reach. So before I heard this, I would say it's most likely that he gets extended. And that still may be what happens. But going through everything I've heard and everything that's been reported about what Brandon Ayuk wants and what the 49ers are willing to do, it seems like they're off on a number. It seems like Brandon Ayuk wants more 27, 28 million. Whereas the Niners are more willing to pay 22, 23 million per year. So there's a gap in between. Now, are these guys willing to meet in the middle and compromise? I'm not so sure. I think Brandon Ayuk knows for a fact that if he was traded, he could get that somewhere else.
Easily.
So yeah, and John Lynch was asked about exercising the fifth-year option. He says, yeah, he absolutely would consider a fifth-year option for Brandon Ayuk. So I have no idea what's going to happen. Would it surprise me if they traded Brandon Ayuk in the draft? Nope. Wouldn't surprise me if they extended them. Wouldn't surprise me if they exercised a fifth-year option. That's why this is such a big story this offseason, because I don't really know what the heck's going to happen, and I don't think anyone does. I don't even know if the Niners know what's going to happen at this point.
Don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point there's an impasse in terms of like how much they want to pay him and how much he wants. Obviously, he's being aggressive and putting out the message that like, hey, money talks and bullshit walks. I mean, that to me that was a huge statement. Just putting out that Instagram tweet or post. I was like, wow. And then he said it he posted that right after John Lynch made those comments about him too, which was like, holy shit. So I don't see them trading Brandon Ayuk. I think that the chemistry he has with Brock Purdy is so much more valuable than getting a new guy. So let's say you trade Ayuk for their first round pick, right? And knowing the Niners, let's say they don't even draft an offensive lineman, they draft a receiver. So now you're saying, okay, we're in our Super Bowl window, and we're gonna have Debo, Juwan Jennings, and this rookie who's probably got all kinds of talent, but that's what you're gonna roll with to try to get and win a Super Bowl. I think that having Brandon Ayuk is a difference maker and is more valuable to keep him on the team. And granted, he still has one more year left on his contract, so unless he holds out, they're gonna get him for at least one more year.
And even if he holds out, the thing about it is, man, if they exercise a fifth-year option, even if he holds out the entire year, they still get him for the fifth-year option because he didn't accrue a year. So he doesn't have a lot of leverage, honestly.
I think, to be honest, I think that if they don't extend him sometime this year, I think that they exercise the fifth-year option and then look to extend him after that because they know that he's locked in. And so if he wants to hold out, he can hold out. But like you said, holding on now would do no good because he has no leverage. He's like, fuck, I'm going to be stuck here for at least 2 more years. So, and it's not like he's on a bad team either. But, players are players and they want what they want. So we'll see how that goes. But I think keeping Brandon Ayuk on the roster is extremely important for the success of the 49ers.
To me, I think they plan on moving away from one of these guys within the next 2 years. I don't think you can have Debo and Brandon Ayuk both combined for $50 million on a team
That's
that
a lot
barely
of
passes the
freaking money.
ball. Right.
Yeah.
So in their head, I again, it wouldn't surprise me if they trade Brandon Ayuk, but I wouldn't trade him unless I'm getting like a top 17 first round draft pick for him. Now, the Niners might do it for less. But yeah, I mean, in their head, I know they think there's no way we're going to have $50 million 2 wide receivers past this year.
That's crazy. That's a crazy number to have for 2 receivers.
It's feasible for this coming year. Like they extend Brandon Ayuk, it makes it cheaper actually, so they could have Debo and BA. But after that, it gets really expensive, and I don't see them thinking that that's something they want to do.
Yeah. Not to mention, they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy after 2 years. They're going to have to pay him, a fuck ton of money. Let's hope that maybe he does a Ohtani contract where he defers it till later on, and everything's cheap for the next 4 or 5 years. Who knows? But I highly doubt that. When it comes to the NFL and the amount of risk you take with injuries and your career, everybody wants their money up front. So we'll see how that turns out. But I mean, with the guys they got so far, do you still think that they're in a position where they can get back to the Super Bowl, or do you think there's still a few players away?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they didn't get worse this year. So they're, as long as Brandon Ayuk still remains on the team, they're just as good, if not better, than they were last year, I think, especially after this draft. Hopefully they have a successful draft. So from a talent perspective, yeah, they're perfectly capable of getting back to the Super Bowl. Now, it doesn't happen very often. If you look at the history of people that lose a Super Bowl, they don't often get back the next year. I don't even know the statistics on it, but I know it doesn't happen very often, if at all. So it would be very rare, but I think it's possible. The NFC is not that strong. Their team's getting better. The Lions, the Eagles, the Seahawks from a coaching standpoint, the Rams kind of like there's teams that are getting slightly better in the NFC, but overall, I think that the 49ers are favored again to be the best roster in the NFC. So yeah, I think they're perfectly capable of getting back, but this may be the last time we get to see a lot of these players on the team.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing, like you were saying, to get back to the Super Bowl, in back-to-back years. I mean, obviously the Chiefs are doing it because they have one of the best quarterbacks that's ever played the game. And that's a real big game changer. I mean, the fact that he had a chance in the Super Bowl, to tie the game and to win the game. So one at the end of regulation, one at the end, in overtime, and you're giving him the ball. I mean, at this point, that's like giving Tom Brady the ball. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, okay, here we go. And I mean, halfway through that drive, I had already told myself they're going to score. We're not stopping anybody right now. And they were gassed. I think the Niners defense was completely gassed. So, that's then, this is now, and, we just got to move forward, I guess. But it's interesting to see who they're going to go after. Now, there's a list of players that have history with the Niners in terms of like their fathers played for the Niners. You got Frank Gore's kid. You have Luke McCaffrey, Tariq Owens, you know what I mean? And then you got Jerry Rice's kid as well. And of all those players, who would you take out of any of those players that have parents that play for the Niners? Who would you take, or I should say, who do you favor out of those players?
I would say it's kind of a toss up. There's things I like about Rice, but I would probably go McCaffrey. I think where they can get him, he's going to give them a good value. And I think his mentality, his mindset is tremendous. Rice the same way. I don't think the 49ers need Gore. Now, the tough part is Frank Gore works for the Niners. So if there comes a place late in the draft and Frank Gore Jr. is available and Frank Gore is on the scouting department sitting there in the draft room, what are you going to tell him? Like,
nah, sliding over a note, like, my son's still
right. Like, I think it would be very hard for them, just from, a human standpoint, to pass on him if he's available late. So they might end up going with the Frank Gore Jr. I think that's very possible. But if I had to pick one, excuse me, I would go with Luke McCaffrey. I think he is a pretty talented guy, and I think he's going to have success to some degree in the NFL. So, and 49ers need a wide receiver.
Well, and the thing with Gore is that even if they drafted him, we saw last year, Elijah Mitchell was barely getting any touches. He didn't even get a whole series until Grant went on a rant about it. And then all of a sudden, Kyle was like, here you go. We're going to give him this little series right now to prove that I can use the guy. But it's funny because, I mean, look, we talk about Elijah Mitchell, JP Mason, and these are guys that other teams would value having on their roster. And yet, Shanahan is so fixated on having McCaffrey in every single play. And I know he brings a lot to the table, but I always felt like, there should have been some plays where McCaffrey was lined up in the slot, you know what I mean? And then you have Mason out there, or you have Elijah Mitchell out there, and you change things up. It seems like he gets very fixated on doing things a certain way. And I wonder if that, sort of holds them back from winning a Super Bowl, because, Shanahan likes things a certain way, and he gets kind of stubborn on, like in the Super Bowl, he completely went away from the run the moment that McCaffrey fumbled that ball. He was like, okay, we're just going to throw the ball now. It just seems kind of weird. Like there's nobody there. There is no like quality control with him in saying like, hey man, we need to start running the ball again. Or, why are you going away from this? It just seems like they let him do his own thing. And I feel like there should be somebody there to sort of question what he's doing at times.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice, but good luck with that. I mean, the guy that he runs that whole show. He's the GM, he's the head coach, he's offensive coordinator, he's the president, the founder, he's everything to the 49ers. So yeah, that's not going to happen. And I think Kyle Shanahan is a great play designer. At times, he's a very good offensive coordinator. He's a good roster builder, but there's things he lacks from a game management standpoint and a head coaching standpoint that I think have cost him overall. Now, he might end up winning a Super Bowl. He's a young coach. He's actually my age. It's weird calling him young, but because I'm 44 and I feel old, but as a coach in the NFL, that's still relatively young. He's got 25 years ahead of him as a coach. So he'll probably win a Super Bowl at some point. It would not surprise me at all. I don't know if it's going to be with the Niners, but definitely there needs to be somebody there to do that, but it's not going to happen.
You talk about age. I mean, yeah, I'm 42, and I start feeling old when I'm watching players on TV and they're younger than you. You're just like, oh damn.
Yeah.
Like, I remember growing up.
The kids are going to be in the NFL, which makes me feel even older. Like all these players that you mentioned, their kids are now in the NFL. You're
like, wow, that came around already. That's just so quick. Yeah. So a lot of things Niners need to do. And like you said, it's tough just to say, they're going to go back to the Super Bowl, because, I mean, a lot of teams don't do it. I mean, obviously the Buffalo Bills did it back then. We know what happened with those guys. But to go back to back, it's tough. And the Chiefs have done it, and they've done it with success. And I would say a little luck as well, because we'll leave it at that.
Right.
But I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the Golden State Warriors. They've won 6 straight, and they're currently the 10th seed in the Western Conference. Winning 6 straight is great, and they kicked the shit out of the Rockets last night. The final score being 133. Was it 133? Yeah, 133 to 110. They completely whooped their ass, and I love seeing it too after all that shit talking they were doing. For a player who's out for the year is talking shit about the Warriors. I don't know if you saw that or not. He was trolling them, and so then they came in there and they completely whooped their ass. So, did you get a chance to watch that game yesterday?
I watched probably 70% of it. It got pretty boring, so I was in and out. But it was on the TV.
Well, they started kicking their ass, so yeah.
But
I mean, it was a great win for the Warriors, and it was great to see Klay Thompson score 29 points. But to me, the biggest difference that I've seen, especially during the 6-game win streak, is that they're starting Trace Jackson-Davis at center, which they haven't done really most of the year, and it's making a gigantic difference. I mean, the guy had 20 points last night.
Right.
I mean, that's something that Kevon Looney's not going to do. Yeah,
Trace Jackson Jr. has been the missing. So my complaint with the Warriors over the last, even though they won a championship either way, but still my complaint, even when they won the championship, it's kind of like how the 49ers, my complaint is, the offensive line on the right side has been the problem. With the Warriors, the problem has been having that athletic big that can defend. Yeah. And I like Looney, and I appreciate what he's done, but he's a backup to me. He's a backup center in this league. At this
point, he's a backup.
He's too slow-footed to be really contend against some of the guys that are in this league. So they needed that athletic big. And now Trey Jackson Davis isn't that big. I think he's like 6'8". So he's not like a huge guy, but he plays big. He's so damn athletic that he's a big. 6'9". So he's a big difference maker for this Warriors team. My favorite rookie that they've had probably since Poole come out of the draft for the Warriors. He's a big difference maker. I think the Warriors, they got hot at the right time, which is good. But do I feel like this is a championship caliber roster, or this is the season where they go all the way? No, I don't. Unfortunately, I can't see them in my head getting past the Denver Nuggets.
No, that's the team. I mean, Denver, I think it's just too much. They have so much talent, and you got Nurkic, or not Nurkic, but Jokic, who's unstoppable. And we beat them, a couple years ago, but they didn't have Jamal Murray. They didn't have Michael Porter. So they had a lot of injuries, and we beat them pretty easily because it was just the Joker, and that's it. This team now is stacked, and I don't see how they can beat them in a 7-game series. But I mean, crazy things. I see them even having problems beating the Lakers if they were to take them on, like in the play-in. That's going to be a tough matchup for them as well because of their size.
Yeah, again, that seems to be the problem with this Warriors team. They just, there's actually a couple of problems I think that the Warriors have had. They haven't, because they have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, two of the greatest shooters, or maybe the greatest shooter, and Steph Curry plus Klay Thompson, who's one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. Because they had those two guys, they haven't been focusing on bringing in other guys that can shoot. And why they've been of that mentality, the NBA has been like, everyone needs to shoot.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're seeing now across the NBA. If you're on the court, you need to be able to shoot the 3-point ball. And the Warriors haven't been bringing those guys in. So that's one of the missteps I think the Warriors have taken. The other one is, again, like what we talked about, just not having that athletic big that can dunk the lob. Trace Jackson Davis has done a great job, and he's been a huge difference maker for the Warriors. So hopefully that continues, and that can be the difference for them. But I just don't. Klay played great yesterday, but Klay to me is very hot and cold now at this point in his career.
Absolutely.
And Draymond Green, as much as I appreciate what he's done and how well he plays when he's dialed in, sometimes he lets his emotions get the best of him, which costs this team. And I just don't know at this point if the big three are done winning championships or not. I'm not sure.
I think they have a shot to go deepest that they can possibly go would be second round. And I think at that point, the competition gets just too much for them. I mean, if you look at the roster they had when they won the championship, I mean, this roster is similar, but obviously you don't have guys like Otto Porter on your team. And that year we had who could shoot, and we also had Jordan Poole, who was actually shooting and scoring at a high rate, which is why that year they were the number 3 seed that year because of a guy like Jordan Poole. And then we saw what happened to Jordan Poole after that. This has gone downhill for him. But I want to see the Warriors at least make it into the playoffs and get past the play-in round. I think they can do that, but they got a lot of holes and a lot of inefficiencies that they got to kind of shore up when it comes to their playoff run. But you still have Steph Curry, who's 36. He looks like he's like 31. The guy's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Steph Curry's still Steph Curry. He actually might be better than he's ever been. Whereas,
I mean, the things he does on a nightly basis is unbelievable.
Yeah. Steph's amazing. And I don't know. I think Klay and Draymond, they've fallen off a little bit, whereas Steph's probably better than he's ever been. So I agree with you, man. I think, we'll be lucky to get past the play-in. If we win the first round, that's fantastic. But I don't have many expectations past that. I don't feel like this is a championship season. No, I'd love to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I would love to be incorrect. Yeah,
I would love for both of us to be wrong.
Right.
I mean, they're a team that can't surprise you, but like I said, a team like the Nuggets or even the Timberwolves, I don't know.
Right.
In years past, we could because they were still building. Now they've reached their peak, and the Warriors are on the down. So it's like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
And just like we said, or just like you were saying about how you're seeing all these players' kids hit the draft. Now we're seeing all the other teams kind of reach their peak while the Warriors are starting to kind of fizzle out. And you're just like, wow, we've reached that point now. I mean, back in the days when we had Kevin Durant and our team was David West, and the team was just stacked. He was just like, dude, there's no one's gonna beat us. Get out of here, you know?
Yeah. I mean, LeBron's son just declared for the draft. If that
Yeah.
tells you anything. Yeah.
Bronny out of USC. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go in the draft now. Like, what? What's happening?
Yeah.
This kid's, what, 18, 19? Like, is that how long it's been? My God.
And not good enough to go to the NBA, by the way. If I'm being honest, and I feel bad. I tweeted about it this morning. Like, I feel bad for a Bronny James because when your dad's LeBron James, that's a lot of pressure to live up to, right? But also, when your dad's LeBron James, you get a lot of opportunity that you otherwise would not get. If his dad was not LeBron James, zero chance he's making an NBA, at least this year. Maybe he'll get better. He also declared for the transfer portal. I think that it's likely he doesn't get drafted and he goes back to college. I think that's a possibility also.
I mean, you think about it, it's like, imagine your dad's LeBron James. You're like, all right, so when I hit the court, I gotta be fucking dynamic, you know?
Yeah, it's just unrealistic expectations.
Absolutely.
You know, I feel bad for him to a degree. Obviously, he's set for life either way, but you do feel bad for that pressure of having to live up to your dad.
Well, all these guys. I mean, even Lonzo Ball. I mean, there was so much pressure put on him to be the next Steph Curry, and where is he now? You know, I mean, he's just a role player. Injured. Yeah. But oh well, though, dude. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me about Warriors and Niners. And this is a side that I was hoping to get of you talking about the Warriors, because I know you're a very Niner-centric channel. So I was like, oh, this is going to be cool to hear him talk about the Warriors as well. So thank you for coming on here, man. I really appreciate it. What do you got going for the rest of the week, and where can they find you?
You guys can find me at, my main 49ers channel is the Ryan G. Hensley Show. I started a new channel. I haven't I'm actually going to be interviewing self-made millionaires. It's called Mill Tickets, MILL Tickets.
I saw that. I saw the tweets you were putting out about that. I was wondering what that was about.
Yeah. So for me, I love talking Niners, and you actually brought up why don't I talk about Warriors? Well, one thing I've noticed and learned, and it's going to be different from you because you're starting this way, but it really messes up the algorithm. Like, I've been a Niners channel. If I start talking Warriors, it's going to drop all my videos and all my views and all that stuff. And it's good that you're starting this way because that's going to help you. You're not going to vary from it. But once you start a channel a certain way, it's very hard to go off of that. And I have so much interest outside of just 49ers, and particularly in business and money and finance and real estate, that I wanted to start a channel where I can talk about things outside of sports. And I have a goal of mine is to be worth $10 million before I die, so I can leave it to my kids. So what better way than to interview self-made millionaires and learn as much as I can from them? So I started that channel. My first interview will be towards the end of next week.
And speaking of interviews too, Ryan's got a great interview with Mike Singletary.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So definitely check that out. And subscribe to the Ryan G. Hensley Show over on YouTube. Initially I was going to be just Niners. And then, because the channel is still really young, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to cover a few different Bay Area sports. And then as it matures, I'll probably end up focusing more on the Niners, because once the season starts, that's all I'm going to be doing is talk about Niners. But in the off season, and it's funny too, like to watch you guys talk about Niners almost every day in the off season. It's like, man, that's a lot, because nothing's going on except for, the guys they signed, the draft coming up. And it's like, coming from a different genre, when there's not a lot of new news, you feel like you're like talking about the same points over and over again, but you're just like, well, let me spin it this way, or maybe I'll add this layer to it and it'll be a little different. And then when something finally hits, it's like, oh, thank God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's why during the off season, I reduced to 3 days a week. I usually go 5 days a week, Monday morning, 9 a.m. But off season, I reduced to 3 days a week. And then in June, I'm taking probably close to a month off. I'm going, because nothing happens in June. I'm going to Hawaii with the family, and
that's nice.
Just going to take time off because it does get monotonous. And I'll cancel the show. But if I feel like I'm just talking about the same things over and over again, I'll just cancel my show because I don't want to do that.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I mean, even on my other channel, there were times where the news was just like the same old shit over and over again. And I would just I stopped streaming for a little while. So I was like, you know what? Until we get some more shit out, I'm just going to slow down, because it's just monotonous. You're like, what? I'm talking about Kyle Shanahan again. What's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but Ryan, thank you so much for coming on here, guys. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to the Ryan G. Hensley Show over on YouTube, and they can also follow you on X and and on Instagram as well, and the same name, Ryan G. Hensley.
Yeah, I don't really post too much Niner stuff anywhere else besides X and YouTube. The rest is kind of like a mixed hodgepodge of real estate and other stuff. So, yeah, just follow me on X.
And your real estate too. That's something that you're also very passionate about, and that's what you I see in the background. Ryan G. Hensley, estate and mortgage. So hey, if you need help getting a house or a mortgage, contact Ryan G. Hensley, and he'll hook you up.
Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a licensed real estate broker and mortgage lender in the state of California. If you need me, I'd love to help you.
There you go. All right, guys, we'll catch you next time. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this stream, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.